fellow geeks. Thank you for joining me for another edition of MedGeek TV, the geekiest place on earth. Today, I am super excited to interview the beautiful and brilliant Alexia Neonakis. I know her as Lexie. She has been in the field of Vedic Sciences or Ayurveda for many years. I actually met her at the Ayurvedic Institute. She lives in upstate New York and is a NYU grad and lives in upstate New York with her family, two beautiful kids. Why I have her on today, well, for many reasons, I just love talking to her, is that she's going to shine the light on a topic that's called Jyotish, or Vedic Astrology. Now, it's a very interesting topic because a lot of people don't know what this is and how precise it is and how scientific it is, and how when we look at mind, body, and spirit medicine from the very beginning, like 5,000 years ago in the Vedic Sciences, Jyotish is actually the one for the mind, right? And we are in a place right now where so much of our healing has to do with mindset. And Jyotish is one of the most amazing tools to help with mindset and calming the mind. Lexie has a gift, really, and I am so excited for her to be here today to share her knowledge on Jyotish. So enjoy this and check it out.
Next level. Next level.
I'm so excited to speak with you today. I know from my own experiences with Jyotish, which is also called Vedic Astrology, I'm continually blown away by our sessions over the last 10 years. Jyotish is incredibly accurate. To me, I see it more of a science versus, well, I mean, I guess it's an art too, but I feel like when you call it Vedic Astrology, it doesn't really give it the credibility because it really feels like a science or a medicine even.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of people don't understand what Jyotish is, and I was hoping maybe you could share or enlighten us a little bit about what is Jyotish.
Okay, so how to explain this? When you're born, your entry into the world, I like to think of our charts, which I actually have a picture of what a Vedic chart looks like or a Jyotish chart looks like, just to show you it's a little different than the Western circle, right? So this is a North Indian version. And so this is almost like a picture of the sky at the moment.
Okay.
And so when I look at that, or when a Vedic astrologer looks at that, what we start to look at is we see in addition to the houses and the signs and the planets, and in Vedic astrology, we have an additional 27 signs called Nakshatras, which we can talk about in a little bit. But in addition to all of these different things, we also figure out a person's dharma, person's path and purpose, a person's artha, how they make their money, but when they feel strong inside and feel like I can speak this, I can express this, this is going to support me and others in the world. Their kama, what makes them tick, what makes them jump out of bed excited, and what they love, and their moksha, their liberation. So we have so many different things that come out of the Jyotish chart. It gives you guidance in terms of timeline, in terms of sort of, we call it like the predictive measures of sorts. To me, it's more of I kind of like to personify things and have a relationship then with the planets and the houses and the time periods that we're in. But we have lots of different time periods and ways to look at the chart that other systems might not have. It allows you to understand where you are now, because everything changes, right? That's the one thing that's true, is that everything's going to change. What you're feeling right now, what you're experiencing now is going to change. And the Jyotish chart can give us the dates, the exact dates of when things are going to shift in our own lives. And it's totally individual to each person.
Yeah, that's the most amazing part, is how it can predict, like, precisely. And from my understanding is most successful businesses all throughout India and maybe in other parts of the world, they have a Jyotish who helps them establish the business in terms of timeline. I mean, people use it for wedding dates. I mean, it's very incredible in that way, correct?
Yeah. I love working with people figuring out auspicious timing for things, especially weddings and opening up businesses or having launches and things like this. I have a lot of clients who come to me for their businesses, not just to figure out what's going on in their own lives, but to specifically look at their businesses or opportunities that they've been offered. So one of my favorite things of doing is when somebody says, hey, I've got this opportunity to work with this person, what do you think? I always say, send me the date, time, and place of exactly when that opportunity was presented. If it was an email, a text, a phone call, look it up. Let's pull up a chart so we have a birth chart of sorts for the birth of that opportunity. And then we can find out exactly what is possible. And it's it's really accurate. It's interesting. So for example, just a few weeks ago, I had a session with somebody out in LA who's in the film industry. He was being offered 2 different job opportunities, one with a company he was with for years, and then a new opportunity. And he was really excited about the new opportunity. But the further I looked into that opportunity, I was like, there's not as much growth. You might be behind the scenes more than, and now it's time for you to step into the spotlight. That might have been appropriate in the past, but it's not anymore. And so as we looked further into the 2 opportunities, right? Because he was like, yeah, I could go with the old, that feels good. But this new thing feels really great too. The old one actually turned out to be the most supportive of him and where he was in his personal path. And he's thriving really well with it. He's loving it. And he's happy that he decided to go with this other company rather than the like sparkly new, like, oh, let's change paths. It was like, actually the one you're on is right. Great.
Yeah. And I feel too that the readings or sessions with you is so positive. I'll call you up and you'll be like, oh, does this feel a little off? Well, that might change. That will change in maybe 6 weeks to 2 months. And I'm like, oh, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
That to me is one of the most mind calming, because Jyotish is for the mind to help us calm the anxiety. And so it helps you to understand what's going on right now and when it will change or when opportunities are going to come. So you can prepare yourself properly for the opportunities and changes in your life. To me, I find it very practical. And I really like giving practical recommendations too, of using Ayurveda, using yoga, using pranayama, using meditation, using whatever shows up in that person's chart that's going to be something they can actually access. Because it's like we have to take it from here and bring it down into our bodies and into our space, right?
Yeah, and that's what I love about working with you too, is because you do give remedies. Like there are remedies within, if you see things are misaligned, they're just like, well, yeah, this pranayama, maybe this mantra, maybe, this different yoga postures. And so on that note, how is Jyotish related to Ayurveda?
So yoga, Ayurveda, and Jyotish are the 3 sister sciences in the Vedic system. Ayurveda is for the body, right? Yoga, they say, is for the soul. And I always think of it as yoga is really to prepare our bodies for meditation, for that connection, right? We go into Shavasana at the end. We're always going into a place of getting out I always think of it as like getting the wiggles out, right? Like you have to be able to your body needs to be calm and centered so you can transcend and connect. And then Jyotish, Vedic Astrology, is for the mind to help us, like I was saying before, help us calm down, help us release the anxiety, help us to understand what we need to do that's specific to us in our own lives and our own charts in that moment at that time.
Yeah. And it's very mathematical. Like when I hear you talk and I see the charts, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of math involved in it.
Yeah. Thank God for my computer.
And
when I was little, I would draw up the charts and like figure out the numbers and like figure out exactly where they were. And it's like, takes days, to do this. Luckily, I can just put in my program and there's my chart.
That's amazing. And you can overlay other people's charts. Like you can compare charts. You can tell me some of the different things that you can do in terms of like finding where people could thrive, where they live, those kind of things.
Okay, so in terms of the overlaying the charts, that's like a method of compatibility to see there's a couple of ways to rate compatibility, right? There's specific systems that are based on numbers when we add up certain numbers based on specifically the moon sign. But there are other ways to look at if people have natural inclinations that align and they understand each other. So like one person's chart might be really dynamic and really active and like a go-getter. And then the other person's chart might be a little more reserved, a little more meditative and pulling back. And so if these people can understand each other, then great. But if they can't, chances are that might be a little challenging at times to have these differences might in the end, even though they might have a draw, in the end, it might not be the easiest sort of connection. So that's one way to sort of figure out the compatibility. There's also, we can look at their dasha sequences, which is like a planetary lineup of what planet is popping up on your life stage at the moment and how that planet is acting out in your chart. Sometimes one person's dasha sequence is supportive of the other person's, and sometimes it's not. So there's ways to see like where I am in life and where this person is in life. Maybe those ways aren't fully going to jive, you know? So it's nice to know if that's going to work. In terms of the astrocartography, you can look at the planetary lines, almost like if you take your chart and like put it on top of the globe, and you can see what lines, where those planets are going to act out on the earth. And so we can find places that are most supportive of finding love, most supportive of work and our career expression, most supportive of retirement, some places even to avoid. I always look at where Pluto and Mars are crossing, because Mars is about accidents, among other things, right? Pluto is about transformation and can be very dangerous at times. Not for everybody, but usually it's transformation. Oftentimes, hopefully it's spiritual transformation can occur. But if I see those lines crossing, I'm always like, just be super careful. If it's in the ocean, don't go scuba diving. Like things like this, where it's like, just be mindful of where you are and how the energetics are acting out in your life, because it's nice to know where we can sort of grab those reins and steer our lives really effectively. And also where we might have some bumps in the road that we need to figure out what remedies, how do I need to interact with this space a little more effectively so I have the least amount of, challenges and traumas and such.
Right. And I know you brought up some terminology like dasha. So I know when people know about Ayurveda, they know dosha.
Yes.
And there are the three doshas and how they interplay. And then you talk about dasha. Can you explain a little bit what the dashas are?
Okay, so I can show you a picture also. So the dasha is this little planetary line up here. I don't know if you can see, but the idea is each planet, this is the way I explain it to my clients. If you think of your life as a stage, and each planet pops up on your life stage, right? Each planet is like, hey, spotlight's on me now. That particular dasha sequence, that planetary lineup, we have 5 main actors on our life stage at all times. Each planet gets to play its role out. One is going to be the primary actor, almost like an umbrella time period that we're living our lives through. And so that planet in our charts gets to express and show us the most, show us his gifts, show us the talents, show us the challenges that we might experience, what our karma is with that particular planet as it expresses in our individual charts. This is very specific to everybody. I have 2 sets of triplets actually who are clients of mine, and they all have different dasha sequences.
Oh, wow.
By a couple of days. Yeah, maybe just by a couple of days is the difference. But still, one person's always leading the way in a sense of what they're experiencing. So it really gives us a chance to see what planet is up, what planet is coming next, what that energy is like, and then we get to understand what issues might come up for me, right? What issues are going to come up and how do I deal with that? So again, it's a very practical application where you can say, well, this is going to be a supportive time of doing this, and that time is going to be supportive of doing that, rather than like pushing against like instead of swimming upstream all the time, it's like you can go with the flow a little more easily when you know what's exactly going on in your chart and when it's happening.
Yeah, and most Ayurvedic practitioners, like Dr. Lad, will look at your chart. Like that's part of the diagnostic tools that we have, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So that's where they say when you're a student of one, you're a student of the others. So if you're a student of Ayurveda, you're a student of yoga and student of Jyotish. So Ayurvedic practitioners traditionally look at the charts to see what's going on in the person's life and to see what health inclinations they might have. There are lots of divisional charts in Vedic astrology. So there are charts that we look at that are divisions of the birth chart. And we have imbalance charts, accidents charts, and cure charts. So those 3 charts I look at all the time in addition to the health houses in the birth chart to see what health inclinations a person might have and what organs, what parts of their body might need some more care and support.
Yes.
So it's something that traditional Ayurvedic practitioners absolutely use as a diagnostic tool.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've also seen in my clinical practice, and I saw this years when I was, over 20 years ago when I was first studying, people would come into the clinic and everybody would have like a knee problem and everyone would have a back problem and everyone would be having headaches. And it was like these patterns. And I'm like, what is this? And then when I started to see that you can actually predict this in Jyotish, correct?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
It
can get a little weird.
Yeah, totally.
People can be like, whoa, how do you know that? It's like, well, it's just in your chart. So it can definitely, but it's incredibly helpful. It's incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know in terms of remedies, there are, like we were talking about how we can remedy. I remember when I was getting into, the Rahu, they were talking about there's certain days of the week that you do certain things, or, with my Jupiter, there's the Jupiter ring and there's certain things that you can do. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Like there's colors that you can wear, just little tidbits if you could share.
So there are ways that we work with remedies in Jyotish, and there are days of the week that are associated with each planet. Okay. So Sunday is the sun, Monday is the moon, Tuesday is Mars, Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, Saturday is Saturn. So right away, what we can do, all of us, separate from which individual remedies we need for our own birth charts to support and uplift or potentially mitigate the harsher effects that a planet might have in our lives. That's what we're doing with remedies. We're trying to sort of boost up the energetics and let that planet know, in essence, that I'm trying to align with you. Like, let's do this in a way that we're friends, right? Not like in a hard way. So, for instance, this is pink, kind of looks red on the screen, but this is actually like this is Friday, right? So this is a good remedy for Friday, is connected to Venus. So it's about pink is the color for Venus to wear on Friday. So the idea is we take the days of the week, we take colors to wear, very easy to do for everybody, right? We take foods that we can eat that are supportive of even the colors that those planets represent, or potentially the organs that those planets are connected to. There's some specific foods that are connecting with planets. We take mantras that we can say that connect to those planets to sort of uplift and support that planetary energy. What else can we do? There are gemstones, like your Jupiter ring. So there are gemstones that you can wear each day of the week, or they call it installing a remedy. So you get a gemstone made by a Vedic gemstone person, and you figure out you're either your Ayurvedic practitioner, like Dr. Ladd would tell people exactly what the carats were that were needed for their specific remedy for their gemstone, their ring, or whatever it would be. And so with gemstones, it always needs to be brand new, not someone else's, because the idea is that you don't want to take on someone else's karma. So, there's specific things around that, and that's more of a sort of a professional person could explain that for each person's chart. I have on my website a list of remedies that are easy enough to incorporate into your daily life, like wearing pink on Fridays, or flowers, or going to the movie, going out on date night, or getting flowers for yourself, or things like this. There are things that the idea is I'm trying to align, right? Monday is connected to the moon, so grays and whites and creams, and being nurtured and connecting with mother figures and ones who are supportive of us. Tuesday is connected to Mars, so there's more action and activity. It's red and maroon, and coral is the color or the gemstone that we would use for Mars. And so you can actually take these things and put them on you every day and say, okay, Tuesday, Mars, I'm working with you, let's do this. Like if you need more energy, kind of thing.
And to interplay it too with things that like intermittent fasting, even.
for
Like
Saturday.
there is this whole thing with, Ayurveda's been doing or has been promoting intermittent fasting for millennium.
Yeah.
And, but, according to people's Jyotish and their doshas, what are
Yes.
the days to do it or how to do it? Is that correct?
Yes. So typically we would fast on Saturdays because Saturn is about austerity, right? Saturday and Saturday. So that's typically what we do. And the idea with fasting from an Ayurvedic perspective is having khichdi, having spiced milk, having something like, in the morning and the evening, and having some simple food. So, and again, yeah, you have to consult with your practitioners to make sure that your system can handle it, because it's not something that, you want to make sure you're not throwing anything off.
Yes. No,
But other things we can do on Saturdays is helping people who are without, because Saturn is also connected to servants and being of service, as well as people who don't have that much. Because Saturn is about sort of pushing, like saying, I don't need all these things, the opulence. That's more Jupiter, right? And Venus. So Saturn is more about, let's just keep it basic and keep it really simple. And so being of service on Saturdays, and being of service, especially to people, and donating your time and energy to people who don't necessarily have, is a really beautiful Saturn remedy.
wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm a total geek and nerd. And, when I tell people about Jyotish, they're just like, oh, that sounds a little woo woo. And then I'm like, well, this is what it, and I really explain how precise and mathematical. And then when they have a reading with you, they're just like, it felt like she was in the room with me. Like, it's a little wild because you can see so much from the chart being far away,
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about how you discovered Jyotish. Could you tell us the
Okay.
story?
So, yeah. So, well, first I was doing Western astrology. I found a book that turned out to be an ephemeris, which is a Vedic, which is an astrological, it's like a map of where the planets are at the time. And it's all math, right? It's all numbers. And I remember opening it up and being like, what? This is amazing. Just, my like 12 or 13-year-old brain was like, this is everything. And that's all I did then till now, is just read astrology books and draw up everybody's charts that I knew. And so when I was in my mid-20s, I remember thinking, I'm not understanding the karma, like why this chart? Why this stuff now? Right? I wasn't getting that from what I knew about Western astrology, which that's not to discount anything with Western. I think it's absolutely a beautiful system. And to me, it's about which karma you have, which system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're both incredibly, just so much information can come and so much knowledge can come from it. It turns out I was out to dinner with some friends, and one of my friends said he had to leave early because he was going to have a Vedic astrology reading. And I was like, you're doing a what? A Vedic what? And he was like, oh, this guy is psychic. And I was like, wait, what? I have to talk to him. He's not psychic. He's very intuitive, because when you do this work, you build your intuition, actually. They say leave room for the spirit, for intuition to come in. And that is true. The more you sit with this every day and practice this as like almost a meditation, you get a lot of intuitive information that comes through. So he told me about his reading, and I was like, give me this guy's number. so that was Jade. And I had a session with him, and I told him the whole time, I want to study with you. And while I was saying this, he was saying, I'll teach you. And I didn't hear that until I got the recording. And then I called him up and was like, all right, let's get some lessons going. So it was really just by chance, or karma, somebody mentioning it, and I just ran with it. I've been doing Vedic astrology ever since, because it just blew my mind open. It was, yeah.
And,
so
and
much.
was it through Jyotish that then you discovered Ayurveda? And then
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Then I discovered Ayurveda because I was looking in that whole section of books, like at the East West bookstore in New York City, right? And I was like, this is okay. This is the next thing, because I was always interested in health and healing.
Okay.
And yeah.
So you were mentioning a little bit about your experience with Western astrology. How are they different? There's something about sidereal, and can you explain a little bit about that?
So briefly, because it can get complicated.
Okay.
So sidereal time. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's basically, we've got the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac. The idea is that one is a snapshot of what the sky looks like, which is tropical, and then there's the snapshot of what the sky is, and that's sidereal. And Vedic astrology uses sidereal because things are moving, but they're not really being accounted for. The Western system is saying that it's where it was about 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So the planets are so the difference then, one of the many differences, and I can go over a couple of them, is your chart will shift a little bit. Your signs will shift a little bit. So from your Western chart to your Vedic chart, things go back about 23 degrees, depending on when and where you're born.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. So it's almost like astronomy it's more connected to astronomy.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, there was a Vedic astrologer, Bill Levesey, who passed away recently. He was an amazing Vedic astrologer. He worked for NASA.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's some credibility right there. That's what
yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the main things, that people sometimes will lose their sign, their sun sign, and people get really attached to it. Like someone's an Aries in the Western system and they suddenly become a Pisces. They're like, wait, what? I'm not a Pisces. But when you start to look at what really the heart and soul of Vedic astrology is called the Nakshatras. And so the Nakshatras are the lunar mansions. It's almost, there's 27 and 28 for outside of personal charts, but there's 27 effectively. Nakshatras, Vedic signs, lunar mansions, where the moon moves every day of the month. So it's based on a lunar calendar. And so everybody's nakshatras are there. That's where we really get into the heart and soul of things, where the chart just opens up tremendously, where you find new motivations. There are animals that are connected with each nakshatra, which is so exciting because you look at people like, you totally look like you're a nakshatra. You totally have this, you look like that. So like for instance, one of my nakshatras connects to the monkey. And I used to climb inside doorways when I was little, like climb all the way to the top of the doorway, and they called me monkey legs.
Huh.
So it's a lot of comedians have prominent Ashwini in their charts. Ashwini is connected to horses. So they do a lot of horsing around. So there's expressions, right? And they're really fun. When you start to look at the nakshatras, you start to see a lot of really beautiful things that come from it. The nakshatras also give us our compatibility. If someone's a monkey and someone's an elephant, are they gonna connect? I don't know. Maybe it depends on it. You have to look and see if those signs, right? If those animals, or if someone's a mouse and someone is a cat. Not the best connection, right? They might be antagonistic. If you have two cats, that can be kind of challenging because, as we know, cats are not, as much as I love cats, they don't necessarily, they're like this MySpace go, right? So the other thing, that's one of the ways, like we were talking about before, it's one of the ways to rate compatibility and to see if a person is going to actually connect with that other person's animal, right?
Yeah.
It also sets up that dasha sequence. A person's very specific moon nakshatra degrees, their moon sign degrees, tell us where they enter into that planetary lineup in their lives. That's why the triplets all have different charts, because they all were born a minute, 2 minutes apart. They entered in because their degrees are off, even by like one minute kind of thing. Their degrees are off, are different rather. And so their dasha sequence, how they live their lives through their charts, that comes up differently than for them. Does that make sense?
It does. And for everybody's chart, it's not just their sun sign, right? When we really look at their rising, is that correct?
Yes.
In Jyotish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we look at their rising sign, which is the time they were born. We look at the moon sign, where the moon was in the sky, and specifically what nakshatra it was in. And then all of the other planets too, of course, are going to fall into place where they were in terms of what nakshatras and signs they are in.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you also, in Jyotish, I know we have the planets, but then you have these nodes. Like I've been in one that's called Rahu for forever, and and can you tell us a little bit about, because I feel like people who know astrology, they understand about the characteristics of the planets, but what are the characteristics of the Rahu and the Ketu a little bit?
So specifically the nodes of the moon are, they're the shadows. The planets are the lights, because Jyotish is the science of light. So we use the planets as the lights, and we use the the nodes of the moon, the north and south node of the moon. The north node is Rahu. Ketu is its counterpart. It's the south node of the moon. So we use those as the shadows, the things that are maybe our challenges, the things that they connect to eclipses. When we're working with eclipses astronomically, we're working with the nodes of the moon. And so this is a part of it. And so this is where you'll see the nodes of the moon show up in the chart for an eclipse, directly in connection. And when it's a full eclipse, they're directly mathematical connection. The degrees are exactly the same. So the nodes of the moon can be, Rahu is, I like to think of it as our very intensely karmic path. There are other ways to figure out your karma and your dharma and all these things, but your karmic path, like what you're here to do, is your one of the placements is your Rahu placement. Whereas Ketu, the south node of the moon, is the things you come into life knowing. It's your past life gifts, your natural inclinations, your things you're like, yeah, I got this. You know, it's good. I'm good at that, whatever it may be. It's something that you might not even realize you have talents at, but because it's just part of who you are. And so that K2 is the thing that oftentimes when we go into a time period, a dasha sequence, when that planet pops up on our life stage, we have to remember our past life gifts. And so each planet is going to, depending on the time you were born and your moon sign, where you enter into that planetary lineup, we all have the planets always follow each other in the same succession. Okay. Where we enter is individual to our birth time.
Got it.
Right? So so you have, your moon is in Mula, right? A degree of Sagittarius. So you entered life in a K2 time.
Ah, just like my daughter.
Just like your daughter, right? Yeah. Interesting karma there, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, and then, whereas my moon is in Revati, I entered life in a Mercury time period.
Okay.
And then K2 followed it. And then Venus followed that. And then the sun. And I'm moving into the moon this summer. And then Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn. And then if you can, after that's 120 years, which is the life of a sage, right? If you're able to live that long, I don't know if you can repeat it, but hey, go for it. Yeah. So the idea is that you enter in and you get to experience that planet's energy, what that planet is going to do in your life. And we all follow the same progression, right? One follows the other. Okay. So we know from K2, you go into Venus.
Okay.
And so the idea do you want me to talk about each one a little bit?
Yeah, because they all seem to vary, but go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So typically, or generally speaking, why don't we start with the sun? So the sun is about you and you putting yourself out there into the world, right? It's like, here I am, everybody, check me out. And then, so it's all about the sun and the soul and the ego, and maybe getting out of your own way a little bit with the ego stuff. And so generally speaking, that's the sun dasha for people. We look at their chart, we look at the connections that planet has in your individual chart, and is it playing out well? Is it playing nicely with the other planets? Is it like sitting there beating them up? Like what is it doing? What remedies are we going to need to do during that time period? What sort of events might take place during that time period? So you can sort of prepare yourself properly. The moon follows the sun. And so the moon time period is about mothering and nurturing and caring and being a little more internal potentially, and it's about security and comforts, right? It's interesting because it's like when we put ourselves out there, then sometimes we need to retreat a little bit and be like, okay, I just need to be cared for a little more, right? Then and tune in emotionally to what I love and what fuels me from an emotional perspective. Then what follows the moon is Mars. And so Mars is about action and go get it and just take charge and blaze that trail. And it makes sense to me because you need to have emotion to fuel what you're going to do. You have to have the understanding and the passion to go after what you're going after, right? You got to have a reason for what you're doing. When after Mars is done, and so these time periods all have certain lengths of time associated with them.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't always remember exactly what they are. I forget them sometimes, but the sun is usually a 10-year time period. Forgive me if I make mistakes with these. I don't remember all of them.
I thought the sun was pretty short because I remember when my husband went into sun, I'm like, yes. And then it was like, well, then it died off like 4
It's
years
actually,
later.
you know what?
Yeah.
I think it's 6 years is
6
what I'm
years.
remembering. I don't know.
Rahu is like
Rahu's like 18. Yeah.
Okay.
Saturn's like 19, Venus is
Yeah.
20, K2
Yeah.
is 7, hallelujah. So, Mars is like 7 and the moon is like 10. So the idea is that they're all different lengths of time. Their umbrella time period that we're standing under for that length of time, it changes. And so when you go to that 5 lineup,
Yeah.
their length of time is going to be correspond with how long or short that particular time period is as a main sequence. So like if you go into a second level time period connected to Venus or Rahu or Saturn, it's going to be a couple years. It's going to be about 3 years long, where depending on the other time period, right? Whereas if you go into a moon time period or a K2 time period as a second level, it's going to be about a year long or 11 months long kind of thing. So so getting back to the sun, moon, Mars, then we go into Rahu, which is all about really like you've got the action, you've got the motivation, you're blazing that trail. Now it's like, well, what is my purpose? Let's get deeper and more intense about it, because Rahu is very intense and voracious. It's the head of the dragon, they say, whereas K2 is the tail. And so Rahu is all about wanting and going and getting after it. One of the things I say to people when they're in a Rahu time period, this is like a pretty good generalization for most of us. When you're in any time period with Rahu, you have to get the blinders on and really focus in on what you're doing. But you also have to remember that Rahu is very Vata in nature. It needs room to move and go off on tangents. So you have to take those blinders off and you have to let it roam and grab those golden nuggets and bring them back and then get back on track. So you always need to know, okay, I'm focused on this task for a half hour. I'm going to give myself an extra 10 minutes because I might go off on a tangent and I'll come back, right? So that's one of the beauties of Rahu, is it can get very intensely directed, but Rahu's shadow side is that it can eclipse us and it can bring in addictions even, especially depending on where it shows up in a person's chart. It can bring tremendous like mind expansion too, because it's connected to things like quantum physics and things like that are much, way out there. Again, remember, going out into the universe is Rahu's thing.
Right. And just to go a little bit on that, I know where it shows up in the chart, meaning the houses, like what houses. Can you explain just a little bit about the houses? Like, what are the houses?
Yes. So each house of the chart, so back to my little picture here, each house, there's the first house, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and around to 12. So each house of the chart, I think of it like a home, right? Yeah. What is that home about? Each house has a different connections in our lives. And then we overlay the sign that's ruling that house depending upon our birth time. Okay. So you have Sagittarius rising, you're going to overlay Sagittarius to your first house. So having big vision, going out there, exploring, being very having that thirst for knowledge and more information and spirituality, right? So that's like coloring everything. That's what kickstarts everything for you, is like that search. And then everything else lines up. All the signs line up through the 12 signs in those houses. It's almost like, what are the colors of the walls, right, of this house that you're in? And what does it look like inside? What's the energy that we're working with in your particular house? Okay. Yeah. And then you put the planets in there and the planets start to sort of play out together.
Because some planets rule certain houses, correct?
That too, yes. So there's two different levels, yeah. So like sometimes people will have planets in a certain house. It's always the house of relationships that people go, but I don't have any planets there. It's like, but you do, because that house is ruled by a planet, and the nakshatra that rules that house is ruled by 2 planets. So we follow those planets and see, where do they bring us, getting more information about that particular house that may seem empty, right? It's like, no, it's not. There's a lot going on there. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And so, and I know that when we discover our path, with you and Jyotish, I know you had that aha moment. How has your work with Jyotish transformed your life? Has it guided you into where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny because I've been doing it for so long. It's just part of who I am. I mean, it's like how I view the world. And I've been, as like, I try to figure out people's charts in my head, you know,
Yeah.
or try to figure out what they are. It's just part of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just like when you're doing the medicine that you do, you probably feel, oh, look, the kidney energy and the liver energy, and, you know, it's like, oh, they could use some ashwagandha or whatever, you know? So it's kind of hard to say, but it's, for me, the thing that it's really done, especially recently, is to really trust myself more and to get out of my own way, you know, and to really, because like I said before, a couple of my teachers said that you have to leave room for spirit. You have to leave room for intuition, whatever you want to call it, for guidance. And while I have always done that, I'm much more aware of that happening now than ever in my life. And I trust it. I trust it completely. I'll ask people, I'll get information that may not be presenting from the chart, but I'm getting intuitive information. And I'll ask the person whether it's a song or I'm seeing some sort of picture of something, or I'll feel twinges in my body around organs and things like this that are, for me, information around intuitive information, that the chart is like the springboard for that to come through. And so I'll ask the person about it, and it's always, there's always some significance to it. It's never just like, oh, I'm making this up. No, it's always something really important that's coming up. And then we can talk about it more to investigate that and figure out what needs to sort of, why is that coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you know what I've, you know, one of the reasons I created, you know, MedGeek TV is that I've learned that the human brain has these 3 things that it desires more than anything. And it's to survive, to thrive, and to build a tribe. Right. And I feel like in Jyotish, it's almost like a roadmap where it can help you figure out what you might need to help, well, survive for one, but how to thrive in your health and in your mind. And then, you know, where, if you could overlay charts or connect, where you could build a tribe, right? And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's so beautiful. And speaking of building a tribe and, you know, creating connections, is there a place where these health seekers could connect with you and find you, like workshops, social media?
So I have a website that I'm updating this summer. It
Yay.
will no longer be the antiquated HTML that it is. So it's ridiculous. It's okay. It has all the information there. It's lexneon.com, LEXNEON.com. So, and there's a link there that takes you to my Facebook page. My Alexia Neonakis Vedic Astrology Facebook page that's my astrology business page, and I'll post forecasts there. I'll post events that I'm going to be at there. And I've just this week gotten onto Instagram, so that's time. So it's yeah, so I'm going to start really just using that primarily for astrology, because it's such a great community to be able to reach so many people. And I really feel strongly that the forecasts, we need to know what's going on, because it can be dangerous, like we saw just recently. It can be very uplifting. Also, it can be very, like, the retrogrades, we're going to have a summer of retrogrades and eclipses, and we need to know how to use that energy wisely and not go, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. It's like, no, become empowered by it, right? And recognize what you need to do in your own life to use this time that may seem tricky, right? How do we use it to transform and evolve?
Yes. No, it's gorgeous. And I remember talking with you before the election, and you know, predicted that whole thing. And I was just like, and you know, it just made me feel at ease. I'm like, okay, you know, it's in the stars. We're going to figure all this out. And so, well, that's awesome. And so in closing, I always ask my health heroes 3 questions that are just fun and just to, you know, hear what you feel. And so one is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Well, considering that I'm a Vedic astrologer and Vata predominant in Ayurveda, definitely flying. I feel like I'm in the ethers already all the time, so I might as well actually do it.
Yeah, you'd be way up there. Awesome. And if you could transform anything in global health that's human or planetary, what would it be?
Well, that's an interesting one because two things come up to me right away. One is from a very Ayurvedic perspective, Agni, right? Keeping our Agni, our digestive fire strong, because Agni is life, right? Learning how to sort of really boost and kindle our fire internally is everything, right? For proper health. And that involves some herbs and spices and proper eating and all that good stuff. But the thing that really, really speaks to me, there's one of my favorite Sanskrit words is prajna parad. It means crimes against wisdom. Prajna is wisdom. And so that's the root of all imbalance, is prajna parad, going against our very deep intuitive knowing.
Yes.
And if we just sit and tune in and use these incredible tools that we have in the world, I mean, the three major Vedic sciences, and with Vastu Shastra too as being another one, the home placements, but using Ayurveda and yoga and Jyotish as tools to help us tune in and really trust ourselves, that to me is everything.
That's beautiful. And so that's the advice you'd give to people for their health, is to really trust.
Trust and tune in, yeah.
That's gorgeous. Well, Lexie, I am so honored that you joined me today. And I really feel like you're going to rock it in this. It's so awesome.
If I can't fly, I'll just get a rocket. Thank you.
Good. And so for those of you watching, if you want to reach Lexie, it's LexNeon, LEXNEON.com. And you can see more MedGeek heroes and our Health Hero channel on MedGeekTV.com. And I look forward to seeing you again, Lexie. See you in the stars.
Thank you.
All right. Be well.
You too.
Bye.